I'm going to go to one of our Ukrainian guests, Ola. You're very welcome. Can I ask you, what did you think when you read reports about that phone call between President Trump and Putin?
Well, President Trump promised us that he will end war within 24 hours after he becomes a president. It did not happen, so these are just the bells of something he's trying to prove. But we have some reasons not to trust him.
I know that your parents and I think your grandmother is still back in Odessa.
Yes.
How are they?
Usually I say that physically they are okay, but it is a huge challenge of being in that situation for 3 years in a row. So my parents would spend at least 3-4 nights per week in the basement, always scared of the uncertainty, whether the rocket gonna hit their house today or not. Usually up here, you might think that like we are safe here, which is again true physically, but I keep track of the signals and I keep track of what's happening back home. And the same, even if being safe here, I won't go to sleep unless I know that they are safe and at least they can sleep in the basement.
We know that Putin has set his sights on Odessa because obviously it's so strategically important, would be so strategically important to Russia. If the fighting stopped now, Odessa could stay in Ukrainian hands. Are there people in Odessa who would feel, okay, it's not the end, it's not the ceasefire we want, not the terms we want, but we need to cut our cloth here to cut our losses?
People are tired, they're exhausted. Exhausted is the right word for that. Definitely it might look as a good solution for now, but everyone knows that it's like sleeping with an enemy. You have to go to sleep with a knife because eventually you'll get stopped or you get shot. Definitely there would be answers that we want people to stop dying. We want people to stop fearing for their lives. But we've already seen in 2014 how it's gonna end. That's just frozen conflict. It's just a pause before, because Putin dreams of my city. And like, we just give him time till he's capable of attacking us again. And that's not, and people understand it already. We've seen it happening with Lugansk and Donetsk. We've seen it happening in 2022, and then it will happen in 5 or 7 other years.
Okay, thanks for that, Ola. I want to bring in Olga now. You're very welcome. You're also from Ukraine. I know you're here with your 8-year-old daughter. But Ola, I know you said you would go back home if you could. You don't see yourself ever going back?
Good evening, everyone. Yes, I don't feel safe to go back to Ukraine. Ukraine is nowadays the most mined country in the world. Like 23% of territory is mined, including Kyiv region where I'm from. And I don't feel safe to bring my child back to there, where I can't guarantee that if she will go to school, nothing is going to happen, or if she's going to be playing on a playground, there will be no mines. Or like my native town is less than 100 kilometers from Chernobyl, and last strikes, Russia tried to reach out the Chernobyl plant. So it's like sleeping on the atomic bomb. You can't feel safe there. You can't bring your child there and promise them that nothing is going to happen.
What do you think needs to happen? We heard from Ola there, she doesn't trust or wouldn't trust Putin in these circumstances. What do you think needs to happen to bring an end to the conflict?
I think that those countries that have promised Ukraine peace in 1994, when we agreed to give up all our nuclear weapons for protection, they should actually stand up for us. They should actually protect us, not just with false promises, but like with actual deeds, with actions, just to show Putin that killing people is bad. And it's not about sanctions, it's about something more critical.
Like troops on the ground?
Yeah.
President Zelensky has talked about the need for a European army.
Yes, because unfortunately we have only like 32 million people at the moment in Ukraine. And obviously that's not enough for such a huge country with such a big border with Russia and Belarus to fight against a country which is like 145 million people. They are much stronger. They use North Korean troops. They use weapons from different countries, and they have been preparing for this war for years.
Okay. Okay, Olga, thank you for that. I want to bring in Artem now. Now, you're a Russian student. You're studying in Dublin at the moment.
That's right.
You're not a supporter of Vladimir Putin,
No.
we need to say that. But can you give us an insight into how the war is viewed in Russia right now?
Sure. I would say that Russian society is probably fragmented into three pretty significant groups. One group is probably the 15 to 20% of people who actively support it, maybe through even some form of donations, and they tend to be older folk from rural areas. The other group is maybe ever so slightly larger, maybe 20 to 25%, and it's richer people from urban areas, college-educated, younger, and they're exactly the opposite. They're super against the war. But the vast majority of people, maybe around 60% of the population, is simply apathetic. Or maybe if you're cynical, they don't mind the war. They think it's something far away. They don't feel that it affects them directly. They live in Moscow, St. Petersburg, relatively, or not even large cities. They don't feel the impact of sanctions, and their quality of life hasn't really changed. So they don't see a way that, or how the war impacts them, and more importantly, they don't see a way in how they can influence or change anything about how the war is going on.
And the people who do support the war, actively support the war, how do they justify their support for it?
Sure, very easily. They trust Putin and a lot of his ministers, mostly because, again, the older people, they went through the breakup of the Soviet Union, the 90s, the social and economic unrest that period brought to Russia. People were struggling to put food on the table. Governments were very inefficient and were constantly toppled by votes of no confidence. The judiciary was constantly blocking Yeltsin's decrees aimed at calming some of the unrest. There was war in the Caucasus. And when Putin came into power on that fateful January morning in the year 2000, he quickly consolidated power. He subdued parliament. He destroyed the independent judiciary. And he quickly put a stop to a lot of the mess that was going on. And some of those authoritarian methods actually bore fruit, at least for the first few terms. And some of these older folks might worry that if Putin leaves, then Russia is going to return to that unstable state.
Very quickly, Artem, how is Trump then viewed?
Trump is viewed as a similar figure to Putin, someone who is authoritative, someone who believes that might is right, and someone who might be able to negotiate a deal.
The death toll, the sanctions, are any of these making life any way difficult for Putin right now?
The death toll isn't particularly felt significantly at home because Putin learns from history. He isn't sending young men. He isn't sending conscripts to die. He's mostly recruiting people who sign up for money, sometimes exorbitant sums, upwards to 4 million rubles in some areas of Russia, which is money people have never seen in their lives. A lot of people who have issues with debt.
What is 4 million euros?
Yes, that's approximately 40,000 euros, which in Russia goes a much longer way than it does here. So a lot of those people, they have issues with debt, maybe drinking problems. They look at the easy money, they believe some of the stuff they see on TV, and they sign up willingly. And it's true that a lot of the people who fight the war do so voluntarily, and which is probably why the losses aren't felt that strongly at home.